Welcome, mere mortal listeners, to another interview. I had the recurrent pleasure of welcoming back on Alex Troll from PodUnion. Now, if you haven't seen the first episode with him, episode number 7, go check that out. It gives a bit of his backstory and what he's up to. But today we focused on PodUnion and the podcast player and hosting website that he's about to release shortly, as well as marketing value and how you can market your own products without being too pushy by simply providing the value and making it the best product available. We also got out our crystal balls and spoke about what we think is coming in the future and his predictions for the coming massive changes that will come through the spread of ideas by instant translation between different languages in the world. This got us on to speaking about Spanish and English, my own personal pet hobbies, which I now know relatively well of both, as well as how that's changed my brain and I guess the differences I see between the two languages. We finally end off with committing 100% to something and following your passions and really getting the most out of life. If you want to know more and all of that is contained within, please check it out. Please check out PodUnion as well. He's doing great stuff and can highly recommend. That's it for today. Kyrin out. Talking just before about PodUnion and how you were having to, I guess, do all these different things for it, like how you're going to market it. And this is actually something we've been thinking about a lot as well. Like, what's the best strategy for, I suppose, getting yourself out there, but not doing it in too like an aggressive way or a too selfish way? Do you have any thoughts on how you personally going to try and do that for PodUnion?
Definitely. Nowadays, consumers and businesses are very smart and sophisticated, even at the lowest levels, like buying lip gloss or something, chapstick at the checkout at any store. If it's too pushy and in your face, it turns people off. Because we've been pushed and marketed to for so long that I think that mode of marketing is outdated and dead, really, except for like consumables like water, food, that type of stuff. But you need to provide value nowadays. And if you're not providing value, then you're seen as gimmicky and cheap, and people will turn away from you, I think. So my biggest thing with PodUnion and my strategy for marketing that is by providing value to podcast hosts out there and people who listen to podcasts. And so that's what I've done to date, just by building the product and by building the platform, is I've solved all the problems that I have envisaged were problems, and hopefully that's providing value to people using it. For listeners, I've solved some issues that I found as a podcast addict that weren't solved in the marketplace. So I've provided value in that way now. So now when I just put PodUnion in front of someone or link it to them or show them my website, that in itself is the marketing that I hope comes across as something that they want to use, instead of me pushing it in their face saying, we're great, we have this, and you must use it for this. Just by saying, look, I've solved your problem that you have, and therefore I've provided value to you, then maybe they'll sign up. So that's kind of my thrust forward.
Yeah, almost letting like the quality of the actual product speak for itself. You don't need to, it's probably, way better that way, not having nothing behind the value, but you put all the marketing on it and then, people buy it and it's like, oh, there's, nothing, or it's crap or whatever. And you can get away with that like once or twice, but in the long run, it could always catch up.
Well, especially when your business model is like subscription based, or in my situation with PodUnion, I don't actually make money because it's free. I only make money when podcast hosts make money. So it's really in my interest to have a quality product that is providing value month after month after month. Otherwise, I just won't make any money, because I'm not taking like $1,000 fee up front and that's good for the year. It's like I've got to keep people interested and keep providing a useful service.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that is modern marketing and the way it has to be nowadays. Because like I said at the beginning, people are too sophisticated now. You can't just like trick people like you could maybe in the 50s or 40s. People kind of know what they want and they expect something that works. And a good example is like Tesla, right? It is a high quality car. I don't actually have one, but I just know from reading reviews and things like that, they've done a good job of making something that is high quality, and people that buy it absolutely love it and consider it like the next evolution in automobiles. And so I think that speaks for itself. When something is high quality, the marketing budget doesn't have to be as big.
Yeah, for sure. I was just listening to a Jim Kwik. Have you heard of him before?
I haven't, no.
Okay, he's only someone who's like popped on my radar like the last couple of days, to be honest. And he's a guy who really emphasizes learning, and like I think his basic story is, as a child when he was 5 years old, he had a really traumatic brain injury, and so he had like this really stunted development. He couldn't learn as fast as other people, and he was just saying like one of the things that like really makes, I guess, like Tesla and Elon Musk so different is you have these transformative things, but they need to be like, it's almost like you need to unlearn stuff or forget things to then be able to relearn it. So he was saying for like the car industry and where all the big improvements or the major innovations come from, it's not really someone in it who knows it, deeply, who's been in the car industry for 20, 30 years. It's someone who comes from the outside, who's, I guess, like got complementary skills, and then just goes, oh, but why do you actually have to use gasoline? Like, aren't the batteries good enough nowadays? Like, why can't we do, this, blah, 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 and go through like these whole different things.
That's a very interesting point, Kyrin, because I think that's you can generalize that idea into anything. Like a fresh set of eyes in any industry or project does usually create some sort of new and better way forward, because the incumbents in any industry are comfortable, and not just because maybe things are working well business wise, so they have no incentive to improve in a big way, but they're comfortable in their own selves and their knowledge, so they just kind of stick with what they know. And so the development and progress doesn't necessarily happen in that instance. But if you have someone come from left field who's from for Elon Musk as the example, he was building PayPal before that. And so he's coming from a tech space and from a international interborder payments type space, which has nothing to do with cars. So the mindset there would be completely different. And if he diverts all his mental resources and experiences in that space to now building a car, it's going to be a completely different and unique car, obviously. And yeah, the sky's the limit in that type of situation when you have someone adding different ideas to a traditionally well-established product.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, fresh set of eyes and fresh thinking is always great.
Yeah. If you feel like humoring me, where do you think like the next big revolution will come from? If you're using like a crystal ball, like what would be the thing that would really change how we're doing? So I guess, what we learned from COVID is like it can come from really anywhere. Like if you said, 2 years ago, what's going to be the thing that'll be like the biggest change in how we all interact day to day, you probably wouldn't have guessed, it's a disease or a virus that's going to do that. Do you have any predictions for us?
Off the top of my head, the first thing that popped into my mind was the breakdown in language barriers with translation services, like on the fly translation services, will be a massive move forward and create a lot of progress in ideas and the spread of ideas. Because if you think about it, until like even still, because the translation services aren't that quick and fluent yet, they're getting there though. But up until now and in the near future, let's say you have an entire culture, China, right? Or an entire culture, India, and maybe that culture it has all these unique ideas and perspectives, which we know cultures have, but they're not being properly or en masse translated into the ethos of like the Western culture and all the people in America, for example. So there's these silos of perspectives that aren't intermingling on a mass scale. So if you have, because the language barrier, yes, it's happening in small ways due to people who know both languages, and they can kind of be the torchbearers for those ideas and perspectives. But with the mass breakdown of that language barrier with these translation services, I think there'll be like a wildfire of ideas and perspectives that will proliferate through cultures from both sides as they begin to be able to communicate properly and easily in day-to-day language. You can start having communications just like this, like you and me. I could be speaking to someone from Germany right now fluently. And I think that'll be a massive shift in society, just the way that things spread and ideas propagate.
Yeah. We're already starting to see that. I've got like a humorous anecdote from a couple of weeks ago where just one of the things I've been doing on Instagram is just like liking other podcast paging and, sort of giving them support, listening to them here and there. And there was this Nigerian businessman. He's got this podcast called, I think, Joey Off Air. And I just reached out to him, was like, hey, man, I really enjoy what you're doing. Just a, quick direct message on Instagram. And he sends me like a minute-long audio in return saying like, oh, Kyrin, it's awesome to hear. I love that, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, oh, man, that's such a cool interaction. And, obviously he speaks English and he's doing podcasting. So we've got that in common. But, he's in Nigeria. There's no way I would have ever been able to, I suppose, even have that small interaction with him. And, maybe it'll go further. Like maybe we could collaborate or something like that. But yeah, definitely I suppose now that the internet is everywhere, you can see it. When I was traveling South America, for example, I was expecting for my phone, I had to be really careful with it. I thought, okay, no, like you can't have it out in places. You can't be wandering around using it as a map or anything. But when I was there, man, they had it everywhere. Girls were like, sticking it in their back pockets, in their boobs and stuff. And I was just going, okay, this is obviously not as dangerous as I thought. Like having this phone, it's not, everyone has it now. So once they have those,
well, phones, I think that's the key, right? Everyone, wherever you were traveling, it was normal for everyone to have a phone because through whatever economic means, globalization, whatever, they could all afford to have phones.
I can tell you how.
Like this.
I can tell you how.
Tell me.
I think probably like a good 20-30% of it is phones stolen from Westerners. So I contributed one of my phones in Mexico to the cause. Right. So I feel happy with that.
All right. Well, enough foreign travelers went traveling and had their phones stolen that now it's not unique to be carrying a phone.
Yeah.
So now you're not like the ultimate target. Like think of traveling 10 years ago with a laptop. Everyone would have their eyes on your laptop.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But now laptops are everywhere, and of course they're still a target for theft. But it's not like before when it was like, wow, what an amazing piece of technology. Let me get my hands on that.
Yeah.
But going back to what you just said with the gentleman in Nigeria that you were able to have a chat with, that's kind of what I'm talking about with the language barrier being broken down. So what you're talking about there is just the internet. So they've broken down with the internet time and space. You can now just be in Nigeria talking to this guy through the internet immediately. But you're able to do that because he knows English. And so that's the only reason. Now imagine when everyone has the language barrier broken down, it's like the next level. So now you have global connectivity and global ability to communicate, because there's still that restriction on the language barrier, even though you have the internet connection. So I think that is the next big wave in just a proliferation of ideas and concepts around the globe.
Yeah, it's actually
that'll feed into everything, right?
Yeah, it's sort of interesting to think that that maybe the next big social media website will come from a language translation website or something that just manages to create a community, and then it just expands until it becomes the next Facebook, the next Instagram.
That's a great point, right? Because now they've broken down all those barriers like we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes me think of, so then let's say you have the one translation company that makes the next social media site or whatever, and everyone in the world's on there. What language are they using? Or what symbols are they using to communicate? Like, do we develop a new one that's like the modern hieroglyphic age where we make a new language for everyone to communicate with? Or is it just going to be English? Or what was it going to, you know what I mean?
I suppose how will they view it? I mean, I could definitely see it sort of being, you already sort of see it with, the meme templates and stuff, which are, a lot of people have compared those to hieroglyphics, where it's easily digestible visual formats, and you can just change the wording on it, and it confers a whole, I guess, like joke or a huge meaning behind it. So you can have, a picture of Mark Zuckerberg with a white face or something and add a little bit of text on it, and it can convey, everything that's known about Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook, how he's like the commission hearings, blah, blah, blah. Like it just goes on and on.
Yeah.
And, maybe that would be one of the ways where it's a visual format. Everyone can understand that. And then the wording changes a little bit. But I think people have tried Esperanto, if you've heard of that, which is sort of, it was meant to be, people tried to design it to be like the world language. And I think they designed it so that it, takes like the best parts of individual languages, where it's, maybe the ease of I don't know enough about languages, to be honest, to say, but like, some languages definitely have some easy parts. English, I know, has like a lot of shit words where you have to, for example, and it can be to or to or too, and they sort of got rid of shit like that, where it's a lot more easier. There's no words that repeat like that, and
so on
it
this
never
point,
took off.
No, Esperanto, yeah. But so there's another thing that a guy did. I just can't remember the name, and there's a whole podcast about it. We need a Jamie. Kyrin, you need to get a Jamie to look this up, mate. But it's anyways, I'll just describe it. We can find it. Maybe we'll put it in the show notes. Yeah. This guy developed in the 60s, I think, 70s, an entire language based on like more like Chinese, I think. Like there were characters with different styles of lines and things put together. And he was trying to push this to be able to communicate with people internationally and create new ways of bringing ideas into your mind by just seeing a symbol. And again, like that didn't take off, but it's having a resurgence nowadays because it's being used for people with learning difficulties and dyslexia and stuff. Apparently they can read this language in a much easier way than like traditional English or the 26 letter alphabet. And it's super interesting that type of thing could possibly have a resurgence, I think, because like expanding on our idea of the next level of a social media platform, what language do everyone in the world communicate together with? I don't think it is going to be English. That's probably the most likely, but I feel like there should be more progress and we should have a new form of communication, and something like this guy's language, I wish I knew the name, could be that new type of thing where that's the new way forward. Because why are we just stuck on English and French and all these historic languages? Why haven't we made new languages like people did back in the day? How come we're not making new languages today? What are we stuck? We're supposed to be smarter and more advanced than we were 1,000 years ago, but we're using these old languages. So
or it can be even worse, because now we've got so many dialects, so many accents as well. I just remember while traveling, and I was busting my ass trying to learn Spanish, really struggling with the accents and stuff. And so I went to this one hostel where it was like I was just going to take a break for a bit. Like I wasn't going to try and practice with the staff, wasn't going to try anything. And I met this Irish guy there, and it was like even worse than trying to speak Spanish with the natives. His English was just so incomprehensible. I'd ask him like a single word over and over 3 or 4 times, like, what are you saying, man? What is that word? And it would be a really simple word like boat or something, but just ridiculously hard. I had no chance of it.
Yeah, like Scottish is similar, but in Papua New Guinea it's a small country, but they have, I think it's 500 different dialects. Yeah. So you have a very small landmass, and I think it's something like 7 million people spread across the entire country, but they're all living very remotely in different villages throughout the mountains. And you can walk for like 2 kilometers and be taught the people that you encounter are speaking a completely different dialect. Yep. And that's an interesting thing to see when you're living and working amongst them, because you get to know like all of their words, and then it's normal for them when you go on a car ride or whatever to know that they can't communicate properly with the neighboring tribes. They just understand that. And the universal language there is English, actually.
Oh, okay.
It's like a mix of everyone seems to know English, because I don't actually know the motivation for that, but everyone knows English. But yeah, they also have Pidgin, which is everyone seems to know, but their Pidgin dialects are also very different.
Yeah, I finally started to understand how I'd always heard people saying like even though you don't speak the language, you can sort of communicate with them. And I never really understood that because I've always just been very auditory based. Like if people make hand gestures and stuff, like it doesn't convey to me as much as words do.
Right.
But I was like my Spanish now is definitely at a very good level, conversational at least. And I was watching a show on Netflix which had it was like a crazy sports around the world, and it had this one which I thought was in Spain, and it was about like a sort of combination between bare knuckle fighting, soccer, and rugby played in this arena with like 28 guys, and it was basically like they beat the shit out of each other to try and throw like this ball in a net at the either side of their goals. And they were talking about it, and I was like listening to it, and they were speaking in their language with subtitles, and I was sort of just reading the subtitles. But I thought it was Spanish, and then halfway through I realized like, oh no, wait, this is actually in Italy. But Spanish has such a big crossover with it, and with my English as well. I could sort of get like 3/4 of it, and I just assumed like, oh, their accent's difficult. That's why I couldn't understand it fully in Spanish.
Now that you know Spanish in a relatively fluent fashion, do you find that you can think differently?
I think I've noticed more, I suppose, a little bit, because Spanish, for example, I think is a lot more evocative in like expressing emotions and feelings, for example. So when I'm just like reading through books or something, I'll notice they've got maybe like 5 or 6 different words for something like gloomy, for example. And I'll be reading them and being like, oh, okay, like I don't particularly know all the different senses of these same words. They're obviously different. But yeah, I think it's like a little bit more of an evocative language. Like if I was trying to be passionate or something, I think I could definitely be more passionate. Like if I'm at a soccer game or something, shouting in Spanish rather than shouting in English, for example.
Well, they say like, don't they say Spanish is the passion language or something, language of love, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe that's French. But
I think that's French, but Spanish is definitely a passionate langue, though. If I just just remember my ex-girlfriend.
So is it because it's more nuanced? Oh, sorry.
I was gonna say like she was when she was angry at me, like it felt a lot stronger than when she was speaking in Spanish rather than English.
Right. Because she could say, I'm pissed at you 5 different ways.
Yeah, exactly.
Really hammer the point home. So is that because, like you said, there's 5 words for gloomy, just as an example? Is it because there's like different, more nuanced levels of this is a gloomy day. Well, this is a gloomy day +1. This is a gloomy day +2, with a different word.
Yeah. I don't know if it's in level of like intensity or if it's in level of maybe more like breadth. So it's maybe a different type of gloomy. It's like rather type rather than intensity, and that makes it way difficult because it's not an escalating scale, which is easy. It's more subjective, qualitative. But yeah, this is sort of just my opinion of it at the moment as well. Like I haven't fully got into the level of living somewhere for I don't know a year. Even though while traveling, I did.
You lived in Brazil, didn't you?
I didn't live in Brazil. I traveled South America, so I traveled. Started in like Chile, went across, went up through to Mexico, then sort of came down. And that took about 14 months. But the thing with that is you're always speaking English in the hostels. Like there's, it's not 100%, committed into it. It's not like I built up huge friend groups and whatnot. Whereas, so I never got to the level where I thought in Spanish, for example. I was always thinking in English and translating.
So my question before though is, I learned a bit of French, and I found that I could think of things in a new way that I hadn't thought before. Like same type of concept, let's take the same idea, but I could now think of it from like a different perspective, shift to the left and look at it from there. Yeah. Do you have that type of thing?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think my thinking has definitely got clearer since I've learned Spanish for sure. I wouldn't say there's been, particular examples where I have a problem or something thinking in English, and then
Yeah,
it's like, oh, I'm going to think in Spanish and I'll solve it. I wish that would be awesome. That'd be a real cool superpower. But it definitely does feel like my thinking has, I guess got a bit more evolved or a bit more, nuanced in a way. I'm actually thinking of picking up German or trying to learn German at some point as well, which would be real interesting. Just seeing how that would change, I guess, both learning the language, because I think it'd be way easier now that I've learned how to learn a language. So learning another would not be as difficult as it was initially, but it would, I think probably, open up another avenue to think differently. Germans are, like their grammar's a lot more different there. It's a totally different thing. And I always noticed all the Germans I met while traveling, because they're everywhere, just like Australians. Even like it could be the guy or the girl look like the most innocent, naive, like fresh faced, whatever, but all of them would have this deep booming, like just super. It just their voice would not match what I expected from them speaking wise when they were speaking German. So that would be like another funny thing.
I'll extend on that with my experiences in travels meeting Germans. Not just the voices, like presence. They have a presence when they speak, but I find, I don't know if it's a language or it's probably a cultural thing, they're very assertive. Very, very direct. There's no beating around the bush, at least with the multitude of Germans I met. And I really actually appreciated that.
I'd agree with that as well. At times, because they can also be very brusque, I guess. So if you're, in a context where you're, having like a casual drink or something on like a patio or in a hostel, and then they come up and like, just dive straight in, like asking questions or it can sort of like not suit the vibe as well that's being created. So it can be like a very good thing and a very bad thing, just like kind of thing, I suppose.
Right. Yeah, like they're not good at being casual. Is that?
I'd say that's pretty close.
Right now going, hey, I'm easygoing.
Even when they're drinking, it's like an intense sort of drinking. And I guess like, think of Oktoberfest, right? It's a huge, massive beer hall party. Like it's not like a casual drink on a Sunday afternoon or anything.
There's like a well-organized structure to how they will consume their alcoholic beverage.
To relax.
To relax. Good.
I think that's the main things I wanted to cover, man. Just have a quick chat. Is there anything else you were thinking of talking of or wanted to bring up?
Do you want to get into chatting about how you've committed fully now to what you're doing, or save that for another day?
Let's do it now. So
okay.
I was mentioning to you on before we started this that I was sort of testing the water, and you can really see this in the evolution of like mere mortals. The first 25 30 episodes were done once a week, like in my parents' house, just with a shitty GoPro camera. We had 2 basic microphones. We spent like $200 max, I think, on all of our equipment. And it was sort of something because I guess both Juan and I weren't really sure if we were going to commit to this, like if it was something that was going to be a long-term thing. And I think that's like one of the cool things as well about us, like me and Juan, and the way we operate is we don't dive into anything 100% like from the very get-go. It's sort of like a gradual build-up, but once we build up, like there's no turning back. Like there's no stopping. We just keep going and going.
That's
and
good. That's good.
You can see that with all the other things that we do, like the Instagram. It was very slow at start, and now we're doing 3 pieces of content a day, like just pushing it out. And we've recently upgraded as well, like got some light boxes, getting a new camera. So
you've got some momentum now. You've got momentum now, but I'm curious about
like the switching point.
Let's say the minute or hour while you're making the decision. All right, I'm going to do this. Mere mortals, full steam ahead. Because before you were just kind of dancing around, right? Playing around, doing it a bit here as a casual hobby. And then there's an hour or day in your life when you're like, this is it.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that,
Yeah.
that thought process.
Yeah, I guess like that's important, but it's also the build up as well. So if you look at like I keep a weekly journal, right? And so if I looked back on it, man, I'd probably be able to say, and because I'm a spastic, I always put numbers to things. So it's like I probably have said in it like, oh yeah, I'm probably like 50% involved in mere mortals now, and then it's probably like, oh yeah, I'm probably about 70% or something like that. So I could probably see that evolution. But yeah, that turning point. I think those sort of things dawn on you, or like it already happens, and then you realize afterwards, like, oh, okay, I'm into this now. Like it's all or nothing. So yeah, that probably happened for me, like maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it wasn't like anything triggered it. It wasn't like anything made it super apparent to me. It sort of just became like, oh, you know what? I don't think I can go back to doing engineering. Like it was something that I had as a backup option, and I even like experimented like sending out some resumes and stuff at the earlier part of this year. And yeah, I guess the realization comes just from your own actions and your own thoughts. Like I realized, oh, I haven't even thought about, potentially going back to engineering. I haven't thought about not spending more time in mere mortals and things like that. So yeah, it's sort of, it's hard because it wasn't like a huge clarity breakthrough, like one single moment. It builds up to it, and then it's almost like realizing it from the past, like it's already sort of happened, and I look back at it and go, oh shit.
I think that is the most appropriate way to start a journey that will be like a long-term thoroughgoing journey, because you were doing it naturally. And it, like, how I just asked you, oh, when was the moment? If someone decides on something and they're like, they set out a plan and set their goals, of course that's good. But I mean, that is just a plan that you hope for in the future. What your process was actually something naturally coming from within you that you were doing just out of damn interest, right? And that's not like some goal that you're hoping that will satisfy you. It's something that's already satisfying you. And so
Yeah.
you're now slowly investing in an incremental way, more and more and more into it. And then you're right. Like you look behind you and you go, wow, like I'm in this. All right. And you've got a bit of momentum already. And you're like, I'm in it. It's the decision was made before, I just didn't know it. And I think that's where you're at. And I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, I think that's good advice just for people in general if they're struggling to find something that they like, really passionately want to do, or maybe they're not happy in their current job or not satisfied. I've always said like my brother was sort of struggling with this a little bit recently, where he finally graduated uni, in the midst of all the COVID pandemic and whatnot, and like he just didn't have any jobs available for him like right at the moment. Like there's nothing on the immediate horizon that in his field. And I was sort of saying to him like, you got a bunch of time now. I wouldn't like dive into like just pick something and say like, oh, I want to do this, for example. I always sort of said like, look at what you did in the past, sort of for fun or just things you naturally did. And maybe that's something you'd want to expand upon. So for him, he used to make soccer videos with his friends where they'd like go to a soccer field, set up some cameras, and he'd do like some editing and make it into like a little short film or something. I was saying, you've obviously proved you've enjoyed that in the past. Maybe that's something you'd want to continue doing, and then add that with something else. So perhaps your engineering degree, like you got that now. Maybe you can combine the two. Maybe you can make an engineering video with a story in it that would be interesting that other people would enjoy. And, not trying to push them down the path that I'm sort of currently going of making videos and whatnot. But, I think
what you're getting at is asking yourself the questions of what do you actually like to do, instead of trying to fulfill some societal or other expectation that you feel like you should, because that's how you're told life is lived. You're actually saying, no, direct your focus to what naturally has come out of you in the past, and then maybe think of a creative way to meld that into a future path.
Yeah.
And that's probably like the most wholesome way to move forward, because it's the most likely to satisfy you. Because you're implementing things you've already done and then combining it with hopefully a future goal. Whereas, you know, a lot of people, they don't, and it's not their fault, but they don't get asked that question or given that advice early enough. And they get pushed down paths just out of society's expectations or parental expectations or something. And then they find themselves 5 years down the road into that path and go, this doesn't feel like me. Why am I here? And it's all because of what you just raised. They didn't ask themselves, what do I actually like to do?
Yeah.
And it's tough. But I think I just had a podcast yesterday about this type of subject. And the biggest thing is, if you're feeling a bit lost or unsure of what you want or what you like or what you should do in the future, just do anything, because you'll get the feedback from doing that. And then that feedback will build into a learning experience that you just build on.
Yeah. Yeah. I imagine it was probably the same for you before you started your, PNG gold mining. You probably like to work with your hands, doing different things. It's not like you're a lawyer.
Right. You're right.
Just hear a crazy story of people doing gold mining in PNG. And it's like, all right, I'm just going to up and quit everything to do that. It was already, there was, a big basis of other things behind that.
Certainly. And the law stuff, while it's certainly been a benefit to my life and everything, it wasn't my core. It wasn't me as a person. I have, and I still have, a completely different type of personality than that. So I should have taken your advice. What was that, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, or whatever, as a young kid, and steered my path differently.
Don't get me started on wasted time.
Yeah. Look, I try not to live with that mindset at all. And I actually don't, because you just chalk it up as a learning experience, because like I just finished saying, I got out in the world and I did something. I took the feedback from how I felt in that experience and how it operated in my mind and me in the world doing that. And I've moved on to different ways from that. And that's all you can do as a human. And that's all you should ever expect from yourself.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Awesome. I think that's a great place to end it, man. Did you want to give us like a little bit of information about PodUnion? What's happening? What's developing there? When things are happening? That would be awesome.
Yeah. So PodUnion is pretty much done. It's now all on me. And I was meant to launch like 3 weeks ago or whatever. But because of my current situation, I've become incredibly time poor, because now I'm working a damn job because I've had to, due to like the mining shutting down and everything. So all that free time I had to really put out and everything before is gone. Yeah. So I'm just trying to do a piecemeal every night, do a little bit of this here and there. And I think, look, I was just talking to tech guys this morning. I'll be meeting with them this afternoon. We should hopefully aim for next week, because between now and then, I should have enough time to do what I need to do on my end to get it ready for launch.
Yeah, nice.
The other fun thing that I've got sorted out is I sorted out some studio time to do like a proper launch presentation. Yeah. And so I'll be in the studio with the big screens behind me to look like one of those big newscast room types things. Nice. And so I've got to write a speech for that. And but it's fun, man. It's all the stuff I love to do. So
yeah. And your is the podcast you have, like the long storytelling form of you and PNG, is that on the back burner for the moment?
No, I do. I still chip away on that.
Still going away.
Still chipping away, mate. It's tough. So I just wrote the second last chapter, which I think is the second last chapter. Writing a podcast is like a living tree. Like you never know where it'll end up. But I think I wrote the second last chapter just on Friday night. So
nice.
I would expect. Obviously, there's lots of editing and stuff, but the nice thing is, because it's a podcast, I don't have to edit it like a book would have to be edited. Yeah. So I've got the skeleton, which I think I can start recording the story on. I'm just going to send it to some people to make sure I have the narrative interesting. So like taking from Hero with 1,000 Faces, that type of structure I'm trying to implement to make sure that it's like a story that really pulls you in and has that traditional structure. So it's compelling.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, when all those things are kicking off, we'll definitely, let people know and send some traffic your way. Cause, I really enjoy what you're doing, man. And, really love chatting with you. It's always fun, always interesting.
It's always a pleasure. Like ever since I've started doing podcasting, it is just, I have the best conversations that I have podcasting. I have great conversations with friends at dinner and stuff, but all these different people out there in the world. Like, it's great. So
yeah, awesome.
Yeah. I'm going to put your guys' podcast on my app. I'm going to feature it. So that'll happen today. I'll do that right now. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Thanks,
all
man.
Right, Kyrin, thank you very much.
Let's do it again.
Talk to you soon.